All right, you filthy animals. Here we are back for part two of To a Skylark. So I'm going to have to blaze through this. I'm really going to try to keep this to 20 minutes. I'll do the best I can. All right, so it's time to do a little more drawing. All right, so when we left off, we had the Shelley speaker engaged in a profusion of praise for and wondering questions he's asking the bird, putting us into the landscape with the bird. And I wanted to, it's time for a little drawing here because keen as are the arrows of that silver sphere, whose intense lamp narrows in the white dawn clear, until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. This is just like what happens with, so the morning star is of course Venus. So as light comes up during the day, the brightness of Venus that is so prominent at night begins to fade because it's so beautiful and we know where it is in the sky. We can still sort of see it because of its sort of majestic glowing. All right, you'll recall from last vid we talked about this, the way that the sun. I assume I may have to draw that a little bit darker. The way the sun, its corona was showing. This is the same idea with the with Venus. Okay, keen as are the arrows. So it's the sound of the bird's song. So in a way, this is synesthesia. So if the light, we know how light is often drawn, like the the star when when the night that Jesus was born. So if you can see this, the light sort of radiates out, and it's the idea here that with the light sort of radiating, we're going to draw it into something like a cross, and you can maybe see here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. There you go. Okay, so you can see how the arrows of light are coming down. This is sort of what Shelley is referring to there. Okay. All right, so all the earth and air with thy voice is loud. All right, so whenever this word makes an appearance, we know we have what? Hyperbole. And the effect of hyperbole is to express great emotion, enthusiasm, provide emphasis. As when the night is bare from one lonely cloud, the moon rains out her beams and heaven is overflowed. All right, now look. So what are we doing here? If we've got the tenor is going to be what? Moonbeams. And then the vehicle is rain or other flowing, maybe falling liquid. Probably you say water, since we've got the double here, right? Okay. So the tenor is moonbeams, and they are falling down like rain. Marvelous. All right, so here at the bottom, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in the 8th stanza, begins an extended simile. You recall from our first presentation on figurative language that you don't often see the extended simile, and this is it falls into that category because what he does is he is comparing the skylark to an array of different things. So the tenor skylark stays the same, but the vehicle is changing. So, like a poet hidden in the light of thought, singing hymns unbidden, till the world is wrought to sympathy with hopes and fears it heeded not. All right, so like a poet and all that expressive language there to go along with it. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot to do? I forgot to tell you that this unpacking is brought to you by the Musgrave Harvest 320 number 2. A delightful little pencil from our favorite pencil company here in the United States, Musgrave Pencil Company, over there in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And as you probably know, there are two pencil companies over in Shelbyville. But Musgrave has been around since 1916. Moon Products is the other one. At one time there were half a dozen pencil companies. over there in Shelley? That question probably will not show up on Trivial Pursuit. Do people even play Trivial Pursuit anymore? I don't know. Okay, so then like a highborn maiden in a palace tower. So this should evoke in you the sense of what? Like a fairy tale. Okay, so something like Rapunzel. I don't think Rapunzel was written at this point, but it's the idea of the fairy tale where the maiden is sequestered and is waiting for her Prince Charming or something to come and free her, soothing her love-laden soul. So here we have how about the alliteration of love-laden? Okay, soul in secret, soothing her love-laden soul. So we got that nice alliteration there. An alliteration, of course, sound device, acoustic device, but also, of course, a figure of repetition. Yes, indeedy. All right, so expect that to make an appearance on the old quiz tomorrow. With music sweet as love, which overflows her bower. All right, so like a glowworm golden. Got the nice music there of g, the G sound, glowworm and golden, in a dell of dew. Shelley must have had a good time when he's writing this poem with all this nice alliteration here. Scattering unbeholden its aerial hue among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. So again, he's commenting in a variety of ways about the about the nature of the skylark and its the fact that he can't see it, that generally people can't see it when it's up there in the sky singing away. All right, so like a poet hidden, like a highborn maiden in a palace tower, like a glowworm golden in a dell of dew. Now a glowworm, let's go ahead and let's point this out real quick. Back then, the glowworm was the term that they used to describe a firefly, also known as lightning bug. Right? Glowworm, firefly, or lightning bug. So these terms are all synonymous. Okay. Like a rose embowered in its own green leaves. So this is when before the rose is open, right? By warm winds deflowered. Warm winds, right? Deflowered. We got the W there. So it's either, if we're just talking about those initial sounds of the W's, then it's alliteration. But as soon as we add in the W in deflowered, then it becomes consonants. Super important that you remember that distinction. You might look at a line and say, okay, so there's two. Remember, alliteration is repetition of initial sounds in words in close proximity, generally stressed syllables. And then with the W in the middle of that word, all three of those in combination moves away from being alliteration and becomes consonants. Okay? Till the scent it gives makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. And so these are the warm winds from back there in line 53. Yep. So we get that nice reflexive element there. Okay. So now, sound of vernal or springtime showers on the twinkling grass. Nice visual image there. And it stands in stark contrast, right, to the fact that we can't see the skylark. Rain awakened flowers. All right, so what is this doing to the flowers then? Animation. At least animation, perhaps personification as well. All that ever was, joyous and clear and fresh, thy music doth surpass. All right, well, I mean, this is clearly hyperbole, right? Can we see that? Yeah, we can. Okay. I mean, the idea that the music of a skylark, I mean, it's not exactly a songbird. Maybe you classify it as that. But the idea that its music, and this is kind of an interesting idea, right? That its music is more beautiful So the auditory image of the music is more beautiful than the visual image of the flowers, and then, or the twinkling grass, right? There's also the implied olfactory image of the of flowers and rain. Hope you see that. Okay, so now goes back into direct address of the skylark. Teach us sprite, so sprite or sprite being spirit, or bird. Like he can't decide which it is. You know, it's sort of midway between. I mean, can you see in a sense it's like, I mean, there's the vague impression of something Christ-like. You know, Christ, man, and spirit simultaneously, and so we can't decide is this bird actual, you know, flesh and bone and feather, or is it something that's more of the spirit? So remember from yesterday's conversation about, or 2 days ago, about the west wind, inspiration, meaning like the insuck of air, but also the idea of the creative spirit. What sweet thoughts are thine? All right, so here's another good example of what? Synesthesia. Because sweet is an adjective that's usually used with respect to a gustatory type element, right? And thoughts don't have anything to do with the gustatory system. So this is a good example of synesthesia. What sweet thoughts are thine? I have never heard praise of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture so divine. Panted. What sound device is that? Onomatopoeia. Of course it is. All right. So remember that the effect of onomatopoeia is to make the scene, you know, make the scene manifest, make it more visceral, something that you experience. Okay. All right. So chorus hymeneal. So this means songs that are sung at a wedding, or triumphal chaunt. Matched with thine would be all but an empty vaunt. So the word vaunt here is, it's like it's a brag, you know, sort of an empty promise. So again, making these implied comparisons between all of these things that are of the human world. They're celebratory. A thing wherein we feel there is some hidden want. Want here meaning lack. But also want is a Janus word, an auto-antonym. So it means to lack something and yet desire it at the same time. Okay. As we're starting to get in toward the bottom of the poem, the end of the poem, there's going to be a lot of paradox that's going to make an appearance. Okay. All right. So now it continues in the vein of addressing the bird. What objects are the fountains of thy happy strain? What does it make that makes you sing this way? So the implied metaphor here. Okay, once again, we're at the idea of water. So it's the tenor here is going to be the Sky-Lark's song, and the vehicle is what? Flowing water. Just like over there. Bet you I asked you a question on that one. Look at the cue right there. Cue, question. It's going to make an appearance. Okay. What fields or waves or mountains? Here's another delightful. What is that element? What do we call that? Something that is syndetic means that it joins. I bet you I'm going to ask a question about that. What does syndetic mean? Means to join. So we know that that polysyndeton means that there are multiple connecting elements. Okay, in this case, conjunctions. So here, what fields or waves or mountains, and you know the effect, so I'm going to ask you a question about that too. The effect of polysyndeton is that it stretches out the elements in a series, right? So instead of there being elements that are separated by a comma and then by a comma and a terminal conjunction, they're all separated just by the conjunctions. In this case, it's or. So it suggests all the different options, the possibilities for choice. Okay? What shapes of plain or sky, what love of thine own kind, what ignorance of pain. These are also a rhetorical form called the, I think you can see this, the rhetorical question. So a rhetorical question is one that does not require an answer, and indeed there's often not an answer to the rhetorical question, of course, because he's engaged, the speaker is engaged in what here? Apostrophe. Apostrophe. So the entire poem is run by apostrophe. Starts in the opening line, hey to thee, blithe spirit. All right, so he's calling to the bird. Bird can't respond. All right, apostrophe. Bet there's going to be a question about that. Okay, question about apostrophe. I hope you're making notes here. Okay, with thy clear, keen joyance, languor cannot be, shadow of annoyance never came near thee. So he's portraying the life of the skylark as being free from difficulty, and I suppose because it flies so high, perhaps nobody can shoot it, and maybe it flies so fast and so beautifully that even the raptors will leave it alone. Can't think of killing it. Thou lovest, but ne'er knew love's sad satiety. Lovest and loves. That's an example of what? Polyptoton. Polyptoton. In this case, for sure, the repetition of that root of love is the emphasis on that emotion, that very human emotion. Okay? Waking or asleep, thou of death must deem things more true and deep. Let's push on over here to the end. Then we mortals dream. All right, so once again, that's hyperbole. Yep. Or how could thy notes flow in such a crystal stream? Yet again, okay? Tenor. Sky-Lark's song is what? Water. So your ground is going to be something that flows in great abundance and that's clear. Crystal stream, not a muddy stream, but a crystal stream. So its song is super clear there in the sky. We look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. All right, so look here. It's paradox, right? As Shelley's speaker begins to contemplate the bird's place in the world and our own place in the world, and how paradoxical life is, that our sincerest laughter, I mean, you generally think of laughter as being something reflexive, right? That there would be sincerity in laughter, but I guess some people fake laughter, right? I mean, you tell a joke, like I'm sure I tell jokes in class, and you guys, sort of, pretend that you think what I've said is funny. It's good for your grade when you do that. I appreciate it. All right, with some pain is fraught. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. So this continues the idea of the paradox. Those two things together. And this, by the way, is a highly quoted stanza from the poem, and by itself it seems like ridiculously hallmark and somewhat shallow, but in context, given the rest of the poem, it's super. It's super poignant. Okay, yet if we could scorn, hate, and pride and fear, all right, what do we got there? Polysyndeton. So I notice that it's made an appearance, and now I ask myself, what's the purpose? Well, the speaker is saying if we as human beings could scorn, put these things aside. Hate and pride and fear. These are all these deadly sins, right? They're the worst of our nature. If we were things born not to shed a tear, wow, I mean, that's fairly stark commentary, right? That we are born into a life of pain and misery. I know not how thy joy we ever should come near. Wow. So notice that sort of antithetically setting us in contrast to the bird, the joyous song of the bird. Better than all measures, hyperbole, of delightful sound. Better than all treasures. Whenever these extremes make an appearance, every, never, always, all, none, these sorts of things. This is all hyperbole. Okay, and once again, expression of great emotion or emphasis. Okay, that in books are found. I got the implied metaphor there. The treasures, in other words, the knowledge that you get, the joy and satisfaction, the richness you get from reading stuff in books. As he's saying, thy skill to poet were, thou scorner of the ground. Scorner being, notice how reflexively it goes back up to this business here, right? So Sky-Lark doesn't come near the ground. It has to go fly really high so that it can give its song. All right, here we are at the end. Teach me half the gladness that thy brain must know. Such harmonious madness. What's that? Two-word paradox? What do we call that? Oxymoron? Oxymoron? Sorry, I can never help but pronounce it that way. Oxymoron. Such harmonious madness from my lips would flow. And so now the speaker, we get the sense now that it's Shelley speaking. Okay? Shelley the poet. From my lips would flow, the world should listen then. If I could express just half of the joy that the bird experiences, and maybe even half through his work, if he could somehow convey to the world that's reading his poetry half the joy that he's feeling in hearing the bird, I mean, then he would, I think, feel himself to have done his job as a poet. The world should listen then, as I am listening now. So once again here, from such harmonious madness from my lips would flow. So once again, you have that water image, don't we? Okay, the business of harmonious madness goes back to, it's a reference, I'm pretty sure, to Aristotle, and talks about the fact that if a poet is to write anything that is worth, so you know what, it's not Aristotle, it's Plato in the Phaedrus. So if you are able to, if you want to be a poet and you want to express yourself, you have to be made almost mad, as in, lunatic, insane, to be able to express yourself in a way. You have to acquire that knowledge, and you can't acquire it without, I think, as he puts it, the muses madness. Okay, so anyway, this is what that's a literary allusion, if you want to look at it that way. The idea of harmonious madness. Okay, so that's all I got on this one, and of course, if you have questions, give me a shout.